Welcome, everyone, to the Ascension Portal Community Gathering Podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Walls. This is a space for deeper conversations, a space where spirituality, higher awareness, multidimensional understandings, healing, consciousness, and human evolution can be explored openly, honestly, and without fear. This podcast is here for those who simply know that there's more to this reality than what we were taught. Through these conversations, we explore topics such as consciousness, expansion, energetic healing, light language, spiritual awakening, multidimensional experiences, earth wisdom, cosmic awareness, and the deeper mysteries of existence. So, wherever it is that you're joining us from today, take a breath, settle in, and allow yourself to be fully present for what resonates with you in this moment. Today's guest is Yasmeen. I cannot pronounce your last name. Turayhi. Maybe you will correct me on that when you come on. She is the host of Gateways to Awakening, and I was blessed to be a guest on her podcast. Gateways to Awakening is a top-ranked podcast exploring consciousness, intuition, spirituality, human potential, and the nature of reality. She's interviewed more than 280 leading scientists, authors, mystics, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders, including Neil deGrasse, Tyson, Charles Epstein, Einstein, oh, that's a bad one, and Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. Yasmeen is also a 4 times author, award-winning filmmaker, product marketing executive, and founder of the Inner Knowing School, where she teaches intuition, energetic mastery, and multidimensional awareness. So I am going to bring her on, and I look forward to gleaming from her experience. She'll be here in a second.
Awesome.
Hi, Yasmeen.
Hi, Patricia. So lovely to connect with you, and thank you so much for having me on here.
I'm so glad that you got to come on. I was telling you earlier that I'm down here with Takata and Isla and also Kevin,
Oh, the whole crew.
the whole crew. And for those that don't know, that's how Yasmeen found me, was through this family that I'm down here with today. So they're listening in. So shout out to
Oh,
all of them. They're watching you. They were excited to watch you.
oh. So please tell them I say hello. They're definitely my soul family.
Yeah. Um, do you do have a topic? I don't know why I said do you. You do have a topic that you're going to share with us. So I am just going to be quiet and allow you to share. And if you get to a spot where you want to invite questions, just let me know. And I invite everyone who's watching to, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. Okay?
Sounds good. And
We're listening. Go ahead.
how long do I have, Patricia? Just
An hour.
okay. All right. Okay. So I'm so excited to share this topic, which is really about 10 energy codes to become the main character of your life. And this is actually a book that I wrote. I'm currently on a book tour. I'm actually in New York City right now. So it's been an interesting challenge, energetically to be in New York City. But the book is really about becoming, again, the main character of your life and utilizing these 10 energy codes. And these 10 energy codes came up from over now 300 interviews from thought leaders, from my own years in intuitive medicine, studying natural law, working with mystics, becoming a yogi, now teaching Kundalini yoga. And I started to notice that there is something very fascinating about the way energy moves. And specifically, I would call it energetic accounting. That to me feels like a better way to explain natural law. Because when you say natural law, people oftentimes get very confused about what that means. So, energetic accounting essentially just means that all systems in nature want to return back to balance. And when we borrow against ourselves, when we borrow against the system, that energy always comes back to collect, and sometimes with interest. And that's what I would call karma, the cause of law and effect. So whatever we put out in the world comes back to us. And so I'm going to share a little bit of a story, maybe some prompts for those of you listening, and would love to also open it up to questions throughout. So this will be a little bit of presentation, then a little bit interactive. So that is kind of the flow that I was thinking. Okay, so again, I believe that life is a game and there are rules to this game. So even if you know the rules, which some people know the rules to the game, they don't actually apply the rules to the game. So we might have an intuitive sense of let's say, energetic accounting, but we might not actually practice it. So one of my favorite quotes that I share, one of my friends, Renee Garcia, says, knowledge without application is just entertainment. So a lot of times when I teach a lot of this material, people will say, well, I'm not seeing any changes, I'm not seeing any results, or, I'm applying sometimes, but then I forget and life goes on. And it really just takes like daily, consistent practice to start to shift the nature of your reality. Daily, consistent practice, small daily shifts. That's it. It's not the necessarily peak experiences, although you can absolutely have these peak experiences, but I think a lot of people just don't know how to integrate the peak experiences so that they have long-term consistent change. And that's what I care about. I care about long-term consistent change that is enough for us to actually feel regulated in our nervous system so that we can move through life without having like things kind of blown out of proportion. So again, it's picking whatever it is, breath work, mantra, meditation, self-inquiry, whatever kind of practice you want to pick, which I have many that I work with, but picking that over a period of time. And what I also see, since this is a podcast where we can actually talk about these deeper topics, is I see kind of a holographic picture around people with different symbols and pieces of information. So I sometimes will actually see sacred geometric structures that are like yantras around people. And so that to me signals that this person's soul either came in with a very specific energetic structure and signature in their field. And then other times it tells me that people have done enough practice that they've built that yantra, that sacred geometric structure around them. And we all have it. What I see is that it's just not turned on for most people. The lights are kind of, the lights are off. So that's what I see. And I think that these practices allow us to turn the lights back on. We have biophotons, and so the biophotons make us more light. When we practice breath work and mantra and we move energy, we become more light. And I have like this whole theory that the whole beauty industry is actually trying to sell us fake light, right? Like we want to become more radiant, so we put on like makeup and lipstick and we get shiny stuff to put on our hair, right? But really the beauty industry is selling us fake light, because if you are truly radiant, then you radiate those biophotons. You become so magnetic, so much light around you that people can't help but notice or look or feel different in your company. And to me, that feels like real beauty, is being so radiant and full of your own light that you are just shining out brightly. So I just wanted to kind of underscore that, because I think that's a topic a lot of people spend a lot of time thinking about in their life, beauty and becoming more light energy, but not actually doing the day-to-day practices. So this comes back to this conversation of natural law. I believe that we've been taught to, we've been overly dependent on our left brain hemisphere, and that allows us to understand things like, analyzing things, being strategic, being in linear time. And I heard someone say this, I don't know if this is true, but that in the West, we're actually indoctrinated to use our right hand in both writing as well as sports to turn on the left brain hemisphere, to make us more left brain dominant. but the right brain tracks intuition, energy, symbols, and it really allows us to see the big picture. So we have to practice both. We have to be able to be in the left and the right, to see the big picture and then go execute, to make it happen. And I think most people are stuck in one or the other, certainly not balanced. So a big part of natural law and being the main character is balancing your right brain and left brain hemisphere. I'm going to just share a little quick story from one of my guests, Dr. Bolte Taylor, who was this neuroanatomist at Harvard. She actually had a stroke at the age of 36 and lost her left brain faculties. So can you imagine that? You're studying the brain, you lose your left brain faculties. And she said all she remembers when she was in the hospital was the energy of the nurses that were coming in to take care of her. She said that's all she remembered. It didn't matter what they did. It didn't matter what they said. It didn't matter what they wore. All she remembers was their energy coherent? Did it feel good? Or was it incoherent? Did it make her stressed out? And so now she has a signature line that says, please be responsible for the energy that you bring. Later, she regained her left brain capacity, so was able to actually explain her whole experience, which I think is pretty cool, because not a lot of people who are in the neuroscience field actually access or have like a lot more access to their right brain. So that's really what it feels like. That's why, many people are very intuitive, have a very strong right brain hemisphere. Artists as well, being able to tap into the non-local. So that's a big piece of it, is balancing the right and left brain hemisphere, being able to go from narrow to diffused, right? Like a lot of us just can either do this, go very, very deep into something, we don't see the big picture, or we see the big picture, but we don't know how to focus. So I think also the real work in this life is being able to see the big picture and then focus, and doing that at will, not doing that dependent on drugs or people or situations, but to be able to say, I'm going to zoom out and then I'm going to zoom back in. I'm going to zoom out and then zoom back in. So that's kind of something that I play with a lot. I'm like, let me just zoom out from this experience. Might be stressing me out, but am I going to care about this in a year from now? Does the world actually care about this? What is the big picture of this small problem? So I'll just pause there. If there are any questions that have come up, I'm happy to answer them. I know I'm just sharing like a lot of information, or I could keep going.
I don't see any questions right now.
Okay, great. I'm just going to keep going. Okay, awesome. So natural law also has to do with rhythms of nature. So balance, seasons, cycles, growth, peak, declines, renewals, the death, rebirth. And I think that, again, we've lost our capacity to feel time in this rhythm of like expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. And I think that piece is really crucial for living a life that feels sacred, that feels at peace, that to have a regulated nervous system, is to be able to see the big picture, to go zoom in and zoom out, but then also know, what season am I in? Am I just in a contraction? In which case, if I'm in a contraction, why am I fighting this contraction, right? Like that might just be the place that we're in the heartbeat of life, right? We're breathing in and then we're breathing out. And where are we in that cycle? So I think just noting that, like what are the cycles in your own life? For me, it happens every 7 years. I notice there's like this cycle of expansion and then contraction, expansion and contraction. And instead of judging the contraction, I just kind of pause and I remember, oh, this is just the rest period. This is just the season of maybe turning more inward, being a little bit more in my due diligence of what I need next, right? Being in the winter period, as opposed to trying to fight. And even, I'm sure we all intuitively know this, right? When we put something on social media or we put something online, and we know that whatever we're putting out is being received, is being welcomed, might go viral. And then other times it's like, well, I don't think anyone is actually hearing me, right? And I pay attention to that. I'm like, okay, is this a moment, or is this a season? And maybe it's time for me to be less outward facing and more inward facing. So that's a big piece of it. Another thing before we get into the 10 energy codes, I'm just setting the context here, is being able to hold paradox, being able to see two very different points of view is also a big piece of being in balance. Because when we go into these extreme polarities, extreme points of view, we actually sometimes might even invite the other point of view in. Every time I have something in my life that I judge, I'm like, oh, I know it's in my life because I'm judging it, you know? And so there's something to just to note, like, why am I inviting this situation in time and time again? And then I mentioned this already, to be able to zoom in and out on demand, and then also having a sense of humor is huge. I do not trust people who don't have a sense of humor, because I think that that is one of the highest forms of enlightenment, of consciousness, to be able to just laugh at this really incredibly sacred but very short experience on this planet. I think sometimes I wonder, like, a lot of people get really stressed out about small things, and it sometimes can just be amusing, because we're all going to eventually die. And I think a lot of us live our lives pretending, or maybe not entertaining the idea that we're going to one day die. So why not just go do the thing, go build the thing, go tell that person you love them, go for it. There's no dress rehearsal. So I really like to live life in that way, like just following the next piece of excitement. So yeah, just wanted to share that. And here's a prompt for you who are listening. What does a more expansive or higher self version of you look like? Like, what is the next level version of you? Like, what would they be thinking? What would they be doing? How would they be showing up? And what are some of the ways that they would be interacting with their loved ones? So let's just kind of take a moment to really feel into that. Like, what does that feel like? Higher self Yasmeen is a little bit more, let's say, confident, a little bit more expressive, a little bit more relaxed. And I always like to work on myself and try to move the needle to a higher frequency or a higher perspective. But it also is incredibly important to just see, like, what is the highest absolute version of myself that maybe I've never even glimpsed yet? And sometimes I like to ask my guides for that. So let's just sit with that. Like, what does that version look like? And maybe if you have a piece of paper, you can write that down. Like, what is, let's say, level 10 version of you doing this month? What are they doing this year? Who are they spending time with? How are they showing up? What are the things that they are excited about? Because that, to me, like, what are they excited about is a big unlock. Being excited about something that you can't even imagine is possible in this new version of self is a really critical way of kind of seeing this future vision. So for me, I'll give you an example. I wrote a presentation for a short film documentary that I've done a number of different short films, but this one is kind of a series, and I already have a person that I'm going to be working with. So that, to me, is like the next level version of Yasmeen has completed this docuseries, and it's now streaming on a platform, right? Now, what would I be thinking about if that was already true? I would be thinking of, I'm interested in what's going on in the awards circuit, or maybe we want to present this to different universities, or maybe we're going to go on a tour to share these short docuseries. So things to think about are like, what would I be thinking if this thing was already done, and thinking from that version. I've heard that you need to hold that in your vision at least 3 times a day for it to manifest faster. So maybe set a timer, right? Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is this idea that most people are running on a predictable script. Now, if you're really intuitive, you can actually see the script that people are running on. And it's amusing because I went to many psychics over the last decade, and every single one of them was wrong. And I was like really confused about that. I was like, how is it possible that all these very famous psychics have always been wrong about my life? And I realized that most psychics are able to read people because most people are on a predictable life script, right? Boring, monotonous days, copy paste inner world. That to me is also huge. Many people don't even know that they have an inner world. And if they have an inner world, it's very much copy paste, right? Reacting, responding to impulse. So you can read their timeline pretty easily if you're intuitive. Now, if you're a person who's doing a lot of personal development, energy work, your script starts to have massive changes, right? And so intuition is being able to see the script, but the creation of a new script is something that you can easily put on the field if you don't like the script that's running. That's what I've seen. And in my experience of living in Los Angeles and San Francisco, is I started to see multiple movie scripts of my own life playing out. And sometimes it would like really alarm me or move me because I could see a very different version of myself living a very different life. So when I, for example, when I was in Los Angeles, I would wake up in the morning and I would see a different script play out. And I realized I need to move to San Francisco because this script that I'm seeing is in San Francisco. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to go find that version. I'm going to go find that version of Yasmeen. And I did. I ended up going to San Francisco and living out that script. So let's talk about the 10 energy codes. This is what my book is about. And I came up with these codes because they were the most, I think, important takeaways that I could come up with from over 300 interviews and, again, my own work with yoga and, energy and sacred geometry and visiting Egypt and working with the works of Neville Goddard and Frederick Dotson. I came up with these 10 codes. Okay, so we're going to talk about them. So rule 1 is exiting the victim loop. Okay, that's the number one critical piece of being able to be a main character in your life. Moving beyond blame, resentment, powerlessness, and acceptance is the first doorway to personal power, right? So I say in my book that you really can't have a good life if you are a victim or if you think that you're a victim. Now, let me actually define this because people are like, oh, what does that mean? You're victim shaming. Let me define this because it's not about shaming victimhood. It's about saying, I understand that this is what happened to me and now I get to decide what I want to do next. So agreement is different than acceptance, right? You don't have to agree with what happened, but accepting what happens just allows you to be here now, to have all of your energy back in this present moment and to be here now. So exiting the victim loop is the number one key to the 10 energy codes because you can't really move energy if you're stuck in a past, let's say, movie frame. Like most people are playing the same movie frame over and over and over again, right? I find that many people also capitalize on their victimhood, right? Like there's like a whole story of people, really making money off of their victimhood, which I think is very interesting. I don't know, and I'll just quote Eckhart Tolle. He said, I'm not really sure how useful it is to share our pain body so deeply with the collective. Like, I'm not really sure that that's useful. Maybe interesting and maybe artistic and maybe a way to bond, but I'm not sure it's useful. And I think that's the key word here. Is it useful to share your victimhood story? Maybe to connect, to share it once, but to use it as a way to live life is really hard, So rule number 2 is about embodiment and grounding. When I was in my intuitive medicine program, spent 2 years learning about intuitive medicine, we had to learn how to ground and become very embodied before we could start moving energy up. Most people are not like actually in their body, let alone like in present time. They're like floating in the room. Fragments are in fractals of consciousness are in different dimensions and frequency bands. So learning how to ground is a superpower. I also spoke to the remote viewing program facilitators about this, And when they teach people how to remote view, the first piece is actually grounding, is coming back in this present moment to locate yourself in space time, in the coordinates of space time that you're in, so that you can travel. It's almost like using your right brain to go travel and then coming back to the body and letting the left brain analyze it, make sense of it. So that's really, really, really key is embodiment. And we just move on. Any questions? I could keep going.
So, reading back on your bio, or I see that you've had a TED Talk, and I was trying to put the link here, but my settings don't allow for chat on this webinar platform.
Oh, I see.
So I can't put but I will put your links on the YouTube for anybody listening. The YouTube will have her links, so you can contact her. I think I've got a link for you for Insta, LinkedIn, a couple of amazing YouTube interviews that you did, including TED Talk. So how did that come to play, your TED Talk?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I did a TED talk on intuition, on how to make better decisions with intuition. And I think it was in, what was it, 2022? Yeah, 2022 is when I did my TED talk. So I had just come out of my energy medicine school, my intuitive medicine school. And then just was asked to do a TED talk. I've done a lot of different talks on intuition with different
Mhm.
platforms. So at the time, though, that was still not as widely understood as it is today. So intuition today is, I think, much more widely accepted, especially with like the telepathy tapes, which is this major podcast that came out. But when I learned intuition, it was all about 26 intuitive, extrasensory, intuitive senses that we all have access to, and some of us have more dominant skill sets than others. And most people have been taught to ignore it because, you know, obviously we live in this world and we're not really meant to trust ourselves. And I think the game on the planet today is about enslaving people, like just mind control, really harvesting energy, essentially, like really trying to gain as much of people's energy, awareness, attention at the expense of their life, which is part of the reason I wrote my book. So intuition gives you the capacity to see what's true, what's not true, discernment. And I think that, you know, we need that more than ever now. A lot of what's happening in the media, you have to be able to really say, that doesn't feel right. Or something that this person is saying just doesn't align with my body. And you don't need a reason necessarily. If it doesn't feel good, if you get a sensation in which something is off, something is off, and we should trust that immediately. Now I don't even question my intuition. But
Yeah,
yeah, so yeah.
yeah. I had to learn to trust mine. I just had that conversation with three different people today about retelling the stories and about aligning with others' stories, right? Upholding their their stories of trauma, upholding their trauma bodies. You know, let's build up your trauma body. Let's uphold this fear and this trauma that you've experienced, and you know, let's keep it in place. So I just had those conversations today. It's interesting that you brought that up, but it's I don't like the term double-edged sword, but it is a double-edged sword, you know, because it's the black and white polarity. It's the contrast because you I find like with this last book that I wrote, I had so many people comment, "You're telling my story," right?
Mm,
I had so many people say, "Oh, I didn't know there was anybody else like me out there." So on one hand, telling our stories helps other people.
yeah.
Sometimes it does, it helps other people. But there's also the side of that where people will begin to identify by your story also. So sometimes it gives people a false story, and they use that story to get pity and um, attention from other people. And then there's the one who keeps telling the story over and over again,
Right.
not healing, just living on the notoriety of the story. The Me Too movement, you know, the Me Too movement was positive in some ways. It brought down a lot of towers that needed to be brought down, but it also reinforced the trauma experience for a lot of people. So
Mm.
I'm glad that you were talking about this, you know. And your four books, do any of your I'm sorry, but I haven't looked at them yet.
No, it's
I'm
all
a
good.
bad host. Do any of your books talk about that? Talk about moving past the trauma?
Yeah, so my first couple books are a very different, Yasmeen, very different life. I've lived like 80 lives, so I'm actually very entrenched, which is, that's something we could talk about is time travel and, creating basically like jumping timelines. That's what I do. So I have a whole career in the tech space as well. I have a long career there. So my first three books are actually about technology, and then this last book is about when I talked about exiting the victim loop, that was chapter one in this new book called A Glitch in the Matrix 10 Energy Codes to Become the Main Character of Your Life. But
Good.
I just finished writing my next book, which is much more detailed about this exact thing. I'm not sharing it because it's just, there's so much that I'm still processing and editing. And so I'm trying to really crystallize that response. But the victimhood piece just kept coming up consistently. It didn't matter if I was interviewing like a neuroscientist. He would say, if you are a victim, if you're staying in your victimhood, it's just hard to change from that state. So what I care about is that people actually are able to change their lives. And that is not in service. But again, telling your story just to make sense of it is important to know, how did I get here? What are the details of how I got here? Let me call it out. But then again, we're just reinforcing the loop. When it becomes a story that's told over and over again, it becomes a negative loop, then it becomes an identity. And that to me, I think, is very hard to shift energy if you're stuck in identity of victimhood. So, I'm the perfect person who could have jumped on that bandwagon. I grew up Iraqi American during the time of the first Gulf War, which was incredibly intense for so many Iraqis living in the United States. I experienced that as a young kid, to witness this cognitive dissonance of, I'm an American, but my heritage is from Iraq, and my country is going to war at the country that my parents are from. I could have
Yeah.
taken that, right? I could have taken that all the way down to victimhood. And I'm not saying that, of course, there was absolute heartbreaking things that happened, right? I'm not going to just bypass that, of course. But if I stayed there, I would have stayed in anger, and it would have taken over my life. And I feel like we are all just packets of energy in human bodies, and we are having different lifetimes. And so it doesn't actually matter what you are in this particular lifetime. You just chose it to fulfill your life mission and path. And so that's what I see is like, we are not part of nations, we are part of nature. And I think I came also in this body and in this experience to remind people of that. When people want to get into the political conversations, I'll say, like, hey, actually, I do understand. I understand. And we can choose a different route. We can create a third possibility. It doesn't have to be in polarity. There are many, many possibilities that exist.
So that brings up, so they talk to me while you're talking. Sometimes it's hard to
Great.
focus on what you're saying because they're talking to me at the same time. They were talking to me about identification, right? Getting stuck in identification um, loops. And we see it with our families the most,
Yeah.
right? We see it with the YouTube movement, but also with our families, like, which is why so many of us have extended families that we align with more than we align with our blood family, right? Because our blood family, our school friends, our community, any between birth and 18, and sometimes into our, early adulthood. But we have an identity And then at some point, most of us begin to heal and begin to move out of that identity into something more positive, more uplifting. And it's you come across the ones who just want to remember you in your trauma
Yeah.
state. So it's very interesting trying to come out of that and not walk the dual life, which is why so many people just leave their families of origin behind. It's like you can't accept me that I've healed and I'm this different person and now I do this and this and this and this.
Mm.
You want to see me as the wounded child.
Yeah, that's a big
So
one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So the book tour that you're on right now is for the last book, not the one that you have coming up.
Yeah, it's about the glitch in the matrix with the 10 energy codes. I just shared a couple of them, but I want us to actually speak to that point because I think that's really critical. I hear that come up a lot.
Yeah,
Um, I
it's
know
really
you.
noisy here, so I'm going to mute myself just in case, okay?
Okay. Yeah, I'm back in New York and I'm in my 40s now. But when I was in New York, I lived here all in my entire 20s, and it's so wild to come back to a place in which my consciousness, my identity, all of it was just so different. I don't even think I was like really on the spiritual path in my early 20s. And speaking of family of origin, but also childhood friends, I think, like you said, people are projecting a version of you from the past into the present, and they haven't seen all the incremental changes. And I empathize with anyone going through that. I think soul tribe is very different than genetic tribe, right? Like those are very different things. If you're lucky, it can be the same. I don't think many people are that lucky though to get like the soul tribe as family of origin. But I came to this realization in my journey, Patricia, that I didn't want to. I didn't want to be a person who just like canceled people from the past. And so that was something that was really critical for me in being able to just be with whatever was happening and not judge it, not take it on, not identify with it. Like I can't spend too much time in the old version of me, but I can spend enough time where we're connecting maybe in the nonverbal realms, right, in like the energy of like love and compassion and play, but we're not necessarily exchanging stories with deep intimacy. And that is just and I've accepted that not, what is it, like Robert Otto once said, people can only give you the level of intimacy that they have developed within themselves. So if you have a deep reservoir of inner world richness, then most people will not be able to see you, but you'll be able to see them. And I know that that's probably your experience. I know that's certainly my experience, is that I'm able to see people so deeply, but I don't really feel as seen by others. And I've also accepted that that's okay. That's just maybe part of the game that I'm in, that I'm playing. And then every once in a while, you meet people like yourself and Kevin and Isla and Takata who are just like soul tribe. I hope you guys are still listening. So,
Yeah, they're still on. Um, so which I mean, expanding that into the different hats that we wear, right? Yes, one of the gifts that I have is seeing people for who they really are, and what that could be a hardship for some people, but for me, because of all the training and experience that I've been blessed with, I have um, I have a deeper acceptance, right? Because I know that we all came here with an assignment. We all came here with agreements, and I've spoken on this so many times. People are probably tired of hearing me say it, but we've played all the parts, right? We've been the good guy, we've been the bad guy, we've been the murderer, we've been the victim, we've been the teacher, we've been the one in the insane asylum. And so we've played all the parts. And so for me, it makes it easy knowing that I don't judge.
mm,
I don't judge people. I become aware of them, and I choose whether or not I want to play in that energy field, you know, but I don't judge them. And so when I was in the working world, I found the theory of the hats, wearing the hats, right? I worked in a medical environment, which was very rigid, academic, an academic environment. And so I had to portray that Patricia,
Mm.
you know, couldn't talk about anything spiritual. Oh my goodness, if I talked about entities and demons, their heads would spin and the green pea soup would come out. Couldn't talk about UFOs, couldn't talk about spiritual growth and being able to see auras or whatever, whatever. And then there's the hat that I wear with my blood family, my family of origin, which is the weather is nice outside. How are the kids? What are you doing this week? What movies have you seen? You know, and then there's conversations in the spiritual community. And even the conversations in the spiritual community, you still have to switch those hats every once in a while, because there have been times when I saw someone and I thought I can have that conversation with that person. And I start talking and they get this look on their face. And I go, okay, drop it and back out slowly, Patricia. Just back away really, really slowly. And then so I just changed the subject, but we have all of these hats that we have to put on, all these aspects of self that we have to put on all the time, and um, most recently I've always really loved the fact that I'm different.
Mm.
I've always I've always been proud of the fact that I'm different, and I dressed different. I've acted different. You know, but as of late, I've I've been noticing that um, I'm wanting to blend.
Mm.
And
That's
and maybe you want to talk on this. I had the talk with my higher awareness. What's going on that all of a sudden I want to wear bland clothes? All of a sudden I want to wear just silver jewelry, not my big chunky crystals that I usually wear, and my uh, bear claw earrings and whatever, whatever. That I want to just like dumb it down all of a sudden and blend into society. And it has nothing to do with my age. So maybe it's because of this wave that's coming that I don't want to stand out. Maybe others are doing the same thing, that all of a sudden we know for protection's sake, we need to blend, that we don't need to stand out any longer. We need to blend. And so, what have you seen that? Do you have anything that you want to address with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I started my podcast 6, 7 years ago, a lot of people were just like, "Are you insane? What are you talking about?" I mean, I got so much gaslighting, and now it's funny, like all these like very popular bro podcasters have all been interviewing the people I interviewed 6 years ago. And I'm like, oh, okay, like I was getting gaslit for that, but now it's very normal to have these conversations. I mean, the UAP files were just released by the government and they identified like 4 different species. I mean, this is like on the news, this is like on ESPN. And and so people are, I think there's a cognitive dissonance with people who haven't quite woken up. I mean, they are going to go through a little bit of a winter, this summer. They're going to go through a winter. But most people, I think we're seeing people wake up at like massive speeds, and I think we're becoming more and more connected. Because when I was growing up, I don't think people really cared that much about let's say, the Iraq War. When I went to Cornell for undergrad, when I was like talking about it, I remember like 3 people showing up to like a conversation. Where now everyone cares about war. We care about Ukraine. We care about Iran. Everyone is paying attention and is very affected by it, especially the younger generations, Gen Z, like the younger groups, like they're much more sensitive and they're much more interconnected. And so we're all feeling each other much more deeply. I think also we're going to become much more telepathic. I just interviewed someone from the telepathy tapes, one of the non-speaking autistic kids, her mother. And I was very moved by the conversation because I felt like, what would the world be like if we were all able to read each other's minds, which feels like the way we came into this reality of just being able to be telepathic. I know that you and I can read, read thoughts, read minds, like read fields. But it's interesting because I think being able to do that, you actually have to be non-judgmental, because intuition only works when you are non-judgmental. When the moment you go into judgment, it turns into a thought, and then you go into polarity. So imagine a world where we are all telepathic. It would just be so incredible because every person would have to clean up their thoughts, their judgments. Like they wouldn't be able to get away with it, right? Like when you could, because I could feel now when someone doesn't like me, I'm like, oh, this person doesn't like me. And, and they have no idea. It's just like this awkward moment where I'm like, I could hear that they don't like me. And then that wouldn't take place if they were also telepathic. So I'm excited. I think that that's going to unfold hopefully in the next decade, maybe sooner, that we're going to be more and more intuitive and then eventually more telepathic.
Yeah, because people are wanting to clean up. They're wanting to clean up their energy fields. I mean, look at the amount of people now that are into fitness. They're
Yeah.
into eating better. They're looking at the chemicals that were put in the food. They're looking at the subliminal programs that are shoved on us all. They're looking at all of that and they're wanting to be better, feel better. And so it makes sense, that if you have cleaned up your energy field and your emotional body, that you become more connected. But I was going to tell you one of the little private giggles that I have when someone, because I'm the one that just says, "Give me a hug." I don't care if you're mad at me. Give me a hug. And one of the things that I noticed, there are very few people who won't have anything to do with me. And um, when they do, it is because they know I can see them and they have
Mm,
something to hide. I mean,
interesting.
without a doubt, I would say 89% of the time I've proven that when they are rude to me or don't want to have any or sidestep me or in a crowded area, they will point in the other direction to avoid talking to me. You know, it's usually because they have something to hide. And the funny thing is, I don't care. I don't care what they've done, you know,
Yeah.
but they somehow know that I can see that about them. And so they'll like try to hide from me and I just smile at them. It's like, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
you, boo. Do you, boo. I don't care. As long as you're not hurting me, or I do have a rule about hurting children, but yeah, I just,
Yeah.
everything is so funny right now. And people are growing by leaps and bounds. They're connecting. They're wanting to know more, be more. They're wanting to be better human beings.
Yeah.
And I love that. So if there was anything that you wanted to um, stress about today and where we're going today and how people can move in that direction easier. People want to do everything the hard way. If you had any advice for people, what would it be?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think after all this research, all the conversations, everything I've done, the only thing that matters is what is going on in your field. Like, what is your inner experience? What are the conversations you're having with yourself? I think that everyone has a radical responsibility to build and cultivate a beautiful relationship with themselves. And that starts with identity of self, it starts with self concept, it starts with understanding your thoughts. Like, what are the thoughts that you have? What are the popular thoughts? What are the ones that keep coming up? What are your triggers? And having a sense of what's going on in your field so that we don't have random thoughts anymore. I think that our thoughts are not, I think, I know our thoughts are co creating our reality by tuning into the field that we want to see more of. So being really, really diligent with your awareness. I'm in New York for the last week. It's been really intense for me. I'm not used to this level of density. And I'm also like I'm I'm fascinated by the people who are still stuck in materialism, who are just focused on the material world at the expense of the sacred. And I think that's the piece I just encourage people to really cultivate a relationship with the sacred, to see things as sacred. Life just gets way more fun that way. And I do think we get taken out by, I guess, these packets of energy that come to collect and hook and move you. And if you're not really, really, really sturdy and grounded in your own knowing and self, it's very easy to get taken out, you know?
Hmm.
And that's my big takeaway is like really get very clear about who you are, what you want to be thinking. Don't let the program you.
Yeah, one of the things that I shared with my groups is one of the things that I was downloaded with is not only is there the collective consciousness, right, where what you're talking about, all of these thoughts and images and, all the collective fears, um, all the emotion, shame, blame, guilt, desperation, fear, all of them are in the collective consciousness. But one day I was leading people to disconnect from the collective consciousness. And the download that I received was now tell them to disconnect from the collective unconsciousness.
Mm.
And I
Mm.
went, what? There's two different things. And they were like, yeah, there's also the unconsciousness, you know, where you refuse to see, you refuse to be aware.
Mm.
So there's two different levels. And so I think that for me, the important thing is people remembering everything, remembering who they are, why they came here, what their mission is. And usually the mission is just simply to be and have that experience that you agreed to have. But also to clean up our own selves, so that we don't affect and infect other
Yes.
people, right? Other people, places, and things. So I like the movement that we're in, though. I mean, it looks dark in some areas, but it's not really dark because sometimes it gets dark before it gets light, right?
Yeah.
I lived in the Dallas Fort Worth area for uh, 52 years, 51, 52 years. I had to move out of the Dallas Fort Worth area last year because I just could not take that energy anymore.
Mm.
I couldn't process it the way that I used to process it.
Wow.
And so I don't know how you're doing with with New York.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the more energetically sensitive you are, it's harder to, my one of my best friends from college, we saw each other last week and she joked, Yasmeen, your vibe is too high in New York. You're gonna have to bring it down a couple notches to survive here. And I was like, no, I'm gonna be fine. But a couple days in a big city it can impact anyone. And thankfully I have my practices, but I definitely feel like a much more, what is it, like a defensive way of living as opposed to just like being out in the world. You really have to stand your own in this city. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So Beck did make a comment. She said, "Energy flows where attention goes, and where energy flows, it grows.
Yes.
It's important where our focus goes." Beck, I didn't know you were a poet as well. So yeah, it's interesting, and it's important to keep your own fields clean. And and we're moving. Oh, that's what I meant to mention, that all of the messages that I'm getting right now, all of the downloads that I'm getting are talking about sovereignty. It's a big word now everywhere. Um, but remembering that we are sovereign beings and that no one can affect us or infect us without our approval. And
Yes.
so, yeah, are you finding that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think when people are saying, like, oh, should I just not be paying attention to the news? And, because what I'm telling people is like, you can pay attention, but just decide, I don't want this in my future. I don't want this for the collective, right? I do not consent. I do not consent to this. And I think that most people are having to learn how to put up boundaries for what
Mhm.
they don't want. But I think that the first piece is getting aware
Yeah.
of how indoctrinated the program is. Again, through music. I mean, every workout class I go to, it's like you're put in a trance. And I think even the musical Hertz is a low level Hertz to program people. So, we have to basically take charge of all the elements and reprogram them. And the water, right? Like you did this too, like the water, the food, uh, music, and main character energy, right, is the book that I wrote. So it's really giving people the tools to stop being supporting characters in other people's movie. Because I think
Yeah.
that a lot of people have no idea. They're like living a life for someone else. They're not living it for themselves.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad that we were able to catch you even while on tour, that you could take a minute and come and talk to us.
Thank you so
And
much.
did we not cover anything that you wanted to talk about before I close this out? Was there anything that we missed?
There's a lot to the book. We probably covered a couple of the 10 energy codes. So if you can read the book, if you want to check out the rest of them, and also just want to say, check out the last interview with Patricia on Gateways to Awakening. It was phenomenal. We got a lot of great feedback about it. So definitely want to
Oh, good, good. I never hear that part of it. So,
check.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. So, thank you, everyone, Yasmeen and everyone, for joining me today on the Ascension Portal Community Gathering podcast. I truly believe that conversations like this matter, and every time that we gather in intentional space, we help to create more awareness, more compassion, more remembrance, not only for ourselves, but for the collective as well. And my hope is that something that we shared here today sparked a new insight, activated a deeper level of understanding, or maybe just reminded you that you're not alone on the journey. So if this episode resonated with you, I invite you to share it with others. It's going to be posted on my YouTube channel, um, Patricia Wall's YouTube. And also be sure and check back. We have a podcast now. I'm on a schedule now for every Wednesday. We're going to have a new speaker every Wednesday. And if you want to find out more about me, I'm on Earthwoman and also Unlocking the Mysteries of Light Language. Really, all you have to do is Google my name and you'll find me. I can't hide. So, thank you everyone for joining us, and I hope that you have an amazing rest of the evening. Thank you. Good night.